Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Fully Charged Show podcast, because this is our roundup of 2023. We're going to be looking back at the year, what we did, what we saw happen, what we saw fail, what we saw succeed. And I just think it's worth mentioning that before we started recording, we were off on an amazing tangent of waffledom, of very unrelated topics, but some of them extremely amusing. So we're in quite a good mood. We've got tea and chocolates, which is very nice. And we're all here together, which is even better because we're in Imogen's kitchen, which I've seen the comments. People say, I love the show in Imogen's kitchen. So your kitchen has got a very strong vote of approval from the viewers and listeners.
Well, there were also quite a lot of comments about the Pink Floyd on the wall.
Oh, did people pick that up?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and I was considering, I was like, oh, do I change them? Do I show that I'm actually a big Steely Dan fan?
Steely Dan. How can you weren't even, your mum and dad hadn't met when Steely Dan were playing.
But that is the beauty of Spotify. All music loses its age.
So I have to admit, I was partial to Steely Dan when they were on tour, which is slightly embarrassing to say. Anyway, Jack.
Yeah, it was only 2003. Surely.
Okay. Yeah. How are you, Jack?
I'm very well. I think the other caveat that needs to be said at the top of this podcast is that you two are operating on a combined 4 or 5 brain cells, if I may say, which in your in your defence is because you've both been quite unwell in recent weeks. So thank you for being here. We'll try and keep this vaguely on the tracks. Is everyone feeling okay?
I'm really well. I'm fine today. Thankfully, it's the first morning for 4 days.
Yeah.
So I feel really good.
I think I'm at 50%. 50%. I'm a little bit deaf.
Right.
I've just had an operation on my ear. And that was on Monday. We're now on Thursday. And 50%.
But so, what is we have to accept, Jack, is 50% of Imogen.
I was about to say.
Is about 190% of me on a good day when I was 30.
That's correct. She could have a major lobotomy and still beat us in a pub quiz.
True. That is not true. I will actually say I am so bad at pub quizzes, and I think that I end up doing this and become really aware of it.
It implies that it's on the tip of your tongue. Yeah. Even if it's not, it makes it sound like you're just nearly there.
But you've had a little bit of illness in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean the team's taken a bit of a battering. I think it is the season. It's been unbelievably cold in the UK in recent weeks.
And wet and grey and dull.
And we've all had like post-live show sniffle.
Yeah.
But it's almost Christmas time. One last little push and then we can all just eat loads of cheese for 2 weeks. That was my plan anyway.
And do you know what? I think with the live shows, there is an aspect of it that's, and not to put people off the live shows because they are obviously wonderful, but there's a bit of freshers flu that I think happens as a consequence.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I wasn't affected by the live show. I mean, in terms of my health, my illness was not connected in any way. But I know what you mean. And there was the great tradition of, I can't remember which show, big show in Vegas that happens just after Christmas. The CES, where everyone got really sick, always. And I've been to 2 CESs and knowing that and going, oh God, and I was 100% fine and never got anything. So it's very...
Constitution of an ox.
Well, yeah, although now a very old ox.
Anyway, if at any point during the pod either of you start talking to a fourth podcast guest who is not actually in the room, I'll just give you a sharp kick in the shins.
Give us an intervention.
Get us back on track. We'll be fine.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah, so the year, in 2023, as a whole year for the Fully Charged Show, for the world, not 100% good. For the Fully Charged Show, not bad. We're very grateful and very lucky that we've had a successful year, I think. I can't remember how many shows we've done. 2, 3, 5.
5 live shows.
Yeah.
Wow.
5 live shows in a year. And how many episodes have we made?
10,000?
10,000.
I think roughly 10,000, yeah. It's 3 a week plus a podcast typically, with a couple of weeks of hiatus off the back of live shows. But gosh, what's that in maths terms? It's a lot.
I reckon we've done between 100 and... Wait, hang on. If we're just saying 4 a week...
4 a week.
52 weeks a year.
5 4s are 20, 200 and something.
I reckon it's about 200, which
That's
is...
a lot.
That's bonkers.
Absolutely bonkers.
So where best to start? Shall we talk about the year through the lens of current events or personal highlights, favourite shoots?
I think the resources for people to follow current events in the world are ample.
Quite.
I think we can probably avoid.
Let's make it all about us. It's about what our favourite.
Can we just talk in our own minuscule bubble?
Yeah. Imogen, why don't you kick us off? Talk to us about some of your standout memories from a year of fully charging and everything electricing, be it memorable shoots, really inspiring products or technologies that you saw, or just funny things that happened on set.
Oh, okay, where to begin? Well, we started the year in Iceland and went to see the Nissan Aria, which was a real highlight because we met with Chris Ramsey and his wife Julie, and they were about to do an amazing electric vehicle road trip from the North Pole to the South Pole in this Nissan Aria. And whilst we had this amazing time in Iceland, there was this aspect where we were like, isn't it interesting that we're living in a world where actually that's not very impressive anymore? It's very doable to do that kind of electric vehicle road trip. So that's not to take away from that shoot or their achievement, but I think it was like we're in a really good place on this transition.
Love that you came away from that trip to the Arctic just going, this is easy. These guys are making a huge meal of this.
I want to do it on an electric monocycle.
Well, that's it. The fact that they were like towing this sort of wind turbine, and you're like, yeah, cool, we can do that. That's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But then I think the other things that have been absolutely astonishing for me personally this year is that I've been able to get a little bit nerdy on a few topics. So starting with e-fuels in May, I think I hadn't been aware of how sort of contentious and politicised e-fuels have been, and to be able to sort of get into that in a bit of a green screener was really interesting. And then also got to be a little bit more nerdy on Inflation Reduction Act, some more sort of battery stuff. And then there have just been some of the most incredible shoots. So big highlight was the floating solar farm in the Alqueva Dam, Portugal.
Yeah, that was incredible.
And not least because you're like, hang on, this is a piece of infrastructure. This creates energy. It is a utility, essentially. And yet it's beautiful. Mm-hmm. And I think that's been one of the things that we're starting to see, that, this whole transition is around how do you get energy from one form into another form in the cleanest, most efficient way possible. Oh, and by the way, it can be very, very beautiful whilst you do it. And I'm sure we'll come to Canada and our trip north soon, which, we have a few stories to tell from that little trip.
Right.
Wasn't there something about the floating solar array that was like really good for fish because it gives them a break from the sun? Did I completely make that up? Or was there some sort of kind of surprising hidden benefit to wildlife? I did make it up, didn't I?
No, you didn't. And I feel very touched that you
good. I remember.
watched that video. And
I watch your videos, dude. We're friends and colleagues. It'd be outrageous. Imagine if I got here and I was like, so genuinely, what have you been up to this year?
I've not seen anything.
I haven't been across it.
I've only watched my own stuff again and again.
I just watched my own videos on loop at half speed.
We are also talking 6 months ago, which incidentally, that was the shoot where I lost my hearing. So, stand out for that reason as well. But the fish thing is interesting because obviously if you're covering a body of water with solar panels, that is creating shadows. And you're really testing me because this is knowledge from 6 months ago. But there is definitely something around what that can provide in terms of shade, what it does to the nutrients in the water. And what people do need to be careful of is how, if you covered like a significant percentage of that body of water with solar panels, what that does to various ecosystems. But certainly in the case of Alqueva, where it's like such a small percentage of the overall dam, the benefits are sort of pretty positive. But the other thing that I found from that was that, we can have these amazing technologies, but often we're let down by bird poo. That is the case with autonomous vehicles. It's the case with solar panels. I'm sure you've experienced that.
I've experienced substantial bird poo on my panels from the lovely pigeons.
Lovely pigeons.
My goodness, they don't do little ones.
But I asked the team about this with the floating ones in Portugal, and they were like, don't worry, we've got a robot. So they've got a robot to clean these solar panels to protect them from bird poo.
Wow.
If AI robots ever become sentient, that's one of the ones who's going to be really off with us, isn't it? The one who's like, my existence is what? Sorry?
To clean bird poo off your panels.
Yeah.
Except they are our panels that power you, sentient robot. So, be careful.
But you started the year in Australia.
Australia, yes. And I was very grateful to be there and saw some amazing things. And the one that's come up recently, so the Janus truck was just so impressive to see a road vehicle of that scale, of that weight, of that power, that is bigger than we can have trucks in Europe. There's no trucks in Europe that size. 94 tons carrying capacity. And it's the number of axles they have. I can't even now remember the details. And that was all brilliant. And I'm really hoping to see them again and see what they do next. And I know they've now made a massive road train, which is an even bigger tractor unit with, I don't know, it's got to be it's got to be 10 tons of lithium-ion batteries that can pull, I don't know how many, like 6 trailers. So hundreds of tons of iron ore, I think it is. But it's in a very remote mining area. But it saves them, it's very obvious this sort of technology saves the companies that are running it millions of dollars in imported diesel. Australia doesn't have oil fields, so they're importing all their fuel. And they can make it. When you're looking at a big truck like that in a remote area, you don't bring electricity in from a power station. You generate it on site. You just put in a big solar farm. The one difference between where we are now, North Oxford, and outback Australia is space. If this house is in outback Australia, your backyard would be 100,000 hectares. There's plenty of room for ground-mounted solar and not a lot of tourism, as in none. But anyway, that was really impressive. I think it's worth being, because I always get criticism about this, one of their trucks burst into flames recently in Melbourne. And you go, that is difficult to, it's a shame for them because they're a really young company that are just starting this. And it was clearly a battery fire. Something went wrong. I don't know what it was. It wasn't in an accident. It was a cement truck, really popular in being used a long time. It's not just been on the road for 2 weeks. But that just sets back the industry and that conversion so much. But then this is a startup company that's manufacturing battery packs on a kind of ad hoc basis. They're not a big manufacturing concern that have a production line. It's individual people putting packs together. I saw them doing it. And that's such a shame because that's a real setback. And I don't know what their response is. So I'm trying to get in touch with them. But of course, I think they're doing a bit of a media blackout at the moment.
But I think that's one of the things that's been really evident this year. And I know that you've covered particularly closely. It's tough for EV startups. And there have been a few that have fallen over this year, perhaps.
I mean, I just want to say one other thing. In Australia, specifically, 304 diesel truck fires in 2023. None of them got in the newspapers. Because why would you? It's just a truck fire. It's an annoyance on the thing.
Important to remember.
I don't think any of the drivers were killed. There weren't any fatalities. People got out before. But that happens, and human technology fails on a regular basis. And that isn't news. But you've got to accept that there's tens of thousands of diesel trucks on the road, and there was one electric cement truck, and that caught fire. You've got to,
And we probably should come back to the FUD and misinformation and...
Yes. Yes, we should.
But we also touched a little bit on how difficult the startup landscape has been and how actually you've been sort of following a few brands this year who've had a bit of a tough time.
Yeah. Well, this week I'm filming my new cars to watch out for 2024 guide, and I watched my 2023 episode just to refresh my memory. And it's striking that a fair few of the cars that I was especially excited about last year did not materialize this year, either because they're delayed or because the company that was planning on making them no longer exists, and that's really sad.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we like to do at Fully Charged is go and visit these fledgling companies before they're quite ready to share their thing with the world, because we like to give people that inside look into what goes into being a brand new car brand. And I hope that we've helped our audience get a better understanding of just how treacherous that path to production is, because it really frustrates me. I know it frustrates you guys when there's a really inspiring new brand. They don't make it to production for reasons, and then the entire internet as one goes, it was a con.
It was a con job. I knew it.
This was
vaporware.
That's the word I was looking for. And on very rare occasion that might be true, but for the most part, it's just that they, one of the many hurdles was one too many for them. With that being said, We covered a bunch of new exciting companies this year who I think are collectively learning from the mistakes of their predecessors. So I'd like to shout a couple out. These fall into the category of my absolute favorite types of shoots. And it's the ones where we stumble across an absolute gem of a company and we get to use our small influence to kind of shine a spotlight on them and hopefully help them succeed to a degree. And one of the standouts for me was Squad Solar this year, which is run by a couple of ex-Lightyear guys who have very much learned from them some of the mistakes that Lightyear made as a company. They kept things very, very, very small in terms of the size of the team. It's basically 3 or 4 wizard Dutch engineers in a shed fettling with, what is it? Essentially a glorified golf buggy with a gigantic solar panel on the roof. And it's just so beautifully, perfectly simple and effective. And I said in that video, if you had 2 or 3 of those parked on the end of every residential street in every major European city, available to rent through your phone for a few quid an hour, how many people would no longer need to own a car overnight? It would be, it would completely change how our cities look.
Well, and that street would suddenly have space for kids to run up and down in and play. And
exactly. People overlook. That's an underrated sort of issue with private ownership of vehicles, is how much real estate in our cities is taken up by parked cars. Yeah. And, there's so many wonderful things we could do with that space, were it not. Yeah. He says, as someone who owns a car and loves it and wouldn't give it up for the world.
I think you have a notable caveat that we travelled loads for this job.
True.
Your life would become very difficult. But I think there are lots of people, you live in London, there are lots of people who work and live in London, don't really leave, for whom that would be absolutely perfect. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a break there.
Another company I'll shout out just at the top here is one who I think when this goes out, the video will just have gone out on the Fully Charged Show channel. And it's a company called Carice, which is a small Dutch sports car company.
It's so weird how so much of this is happening in the Netherlands, isn't it?
Incredible. Incredible. And there's a few things I love about these guys. First of all, the car is beautiful. It weighs 600 kilos. It's got 50 horsepower, a wooden steering wheel, no anti-lock brakes, no power steering, no nothing. And it's built like a Swiss watch.
Exquisite.
It's beautiful.
The interior.
Exquisite little thing.
My goodness.
And I talk about how I feel like I'm seeing these small new car brands learning from the mistakes of their predecessors. One of the things I really like about these guys is where most new car brands will make a render image of the car they think they might make one day, paste it all over the internet and collect as many pre-orders as they can, thus inviting huge amounts of time pressure on themselves. These guys have been operating in the shadows. They have been deliberately avoiding press coverage and just quietly perfecting this thing. And to the point where now we're one of the lucky few to have ever filmed with it or driven it. And it's ready for production. They're going to start selling them to customers at the top of next year.
Right.
It's also, it was so good to sit in it at Fully Charged Live in Amsterdam, because exactly as you described, those like really physical mechanical buttons where you're like dunk, 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 dunk. But I will just say this, every time you say Carice, this is really going to indicate exactly how old I am. In Beauty and the Beast. Yes, know it. Gaston says, crazy old Maurice. And I think of that every time you say Carice.
What it's done for me every time is Silence of the Lambs. I go, hello, Carice. Yes, which is close enough. So,
I went Beauty and the Beast, you went Silence
of the Lambs.
Silence of the Lambs,
very
slightly
differing
different
ends of a spectrum there.
When you said that, I went, I'm really not with it now. I don't know what the hell that is.
But yeah, those were definitely a couple of favourites for me this year, and of course both brand new car brands. And I'll just do one more very quickly, Fisker, which is a different sort of brand new car brand because it's not like they've come out of absolutely nowhere.
No, I mean they've been around a long time.
They've been around a long time. Henrik Fisker is something of a titan of the industry.
That was actually a highlight for me when we had dinner with Henrik Fisker.
I didn't want to bring it up. I didn't want to name drop.
Okay.
We did a little bit have sashimi in Oslo with Henrik Fisker.
We may have had sashimi in Oslo.
I just need to... So this, when we were talking about doing this podcast yesterday, this sprung a little memory into my brain because whilst you were having dinner with Henrik Fisker on some...
In Oslo.
At the Nordic EV Summit on some very, very beautiful electric boat.
And that wasn't on it. We were in an extremely beautiful electric restaurant, which... Yeah.
But proceed. Where were you? Do you remember?
Where was I? Well, I was with our lovely team in Hull.
It's a lovely city.
It is a lovely city. We were in a travel lodge. We'd just seen some shoplifters, and we were opposite a bingo hall called Stella. That's where we were. And we went and saw a big battery stationary storage system, which was brilliant. Pillswood near Doggerbank. Very excellent. That was another highlight from this year. But I think it really highlighted the
occasional
bandwidth
difference
of things that we cover. But yeah.
That was. I enjoyed the contrast.
The following evening, though, we were on an exquisite, stunning electric boat cruising around the incredible harbour and bays of.
Yeah, and that was quite cold as well, so that was hard for us.
It was chilly. I was chilly. I had to put a small coat on.
So at the same time, when we were at Pillswood stationary energy storage place, we were informed that there were no toilets. So we did a shoot without little wee. So again, the contrasts persist. But
I've got one to go vaguely back on topic. I've got one additional to your amazing list, which has just gone out, the Helix van, which is one of those. I think it was so worth doing because it's all the time I was there. I cannot judge if this is a flash in the pan, a no-hoper, or really interesting. It's a very interesting new business model, and the comments from people are more positive than you'd think for a long-running YouTube show that's highlighted quite a lot of now failed and disappeared new car brands, and it's really intriguing because they're not saying we're going to make this. That's the really clever difference, that they're going to say we'll show you how to make it.
That's interesting.
Build here's a factory in a box, unpack it, start making these vans in Mozambique, in Kenya, in India, anywhere.
Amazing, isn't
it? And it's beautifully designed. I drove it around. I took it for an extensive drive around a small industrial estate in Oxfordshire.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because we do read the comments on the videos. We all do. And we know that skepticism that can exist around various EV startups. And I think we have a responsibility that we don't kind of over-egg the pudding either. And so we were definitely apprehensive about Helix, who have this incredible franchise model where anyone could, in theory...
That's the word, franchise. Yes,
license a factory, build these vehicles in whatever volume that they need to. And in order to do that, they've built it in this extremely simple way that it kind of just slots together. And... they've got a lot of work to do, no question.
Yeah.
There is so much work to do, and the barriers to success are still absolutely huge. But you're absolutely right. Watching the comments, people were kind of like, all right, okay, let's see.
Yeah.
And that's what I like to see.
Because they haven't built like a one prototype, and then as soon as we've got the investment for our huge $7 billion factory, we'll be churning these out by the 100. They're not saying that. We're never going to make them. They might develop modifications or new technologies around it, but they're not going to ever manufacture them. They're just literally licensing them. And some really bright people behind that company from, interesting backgrounds. But I mean, that was certainly a surprise difference. So we don't know. We'll see. If there's 5,000 Helix vans made outside Mumbai, we'll be very happy.
But the other thing we have to say is that a highlight of that shoot was that we got these most incredible branded cupcakes.
Yes.
Yeah, we turned up and there were these amazing cupcakes with fully charged logos on them. Yeah.
Oh, with our branding.
Yeah.
So while you were probably shooting some fancy car, Imogen and I had branded cupcakes. And tea.
It's no sashimi with Henrik Fisker, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Boggs. Was the solar catamaran this year? Or was that last year? Because I'm still cross about the solar catamaran.
I think that was last year.
That was last year. But I would say, and I feel really bad for being rude about Hull, because actually Hull has some amazing things, not least off
exits where you can leave Hull. That's one of the highlights.
No, just think about Dogger Bank. They have exceptional offshore wind farms and all of the supporting industry.
It's the energy estuary now.
Exactly.
The Hum boroughs, yeah.
But I would say there are kind of like two really, really big highlights from some various trips that we did. One was, of course, to Vancouver, where we just saw the most amazing technologies. We got to know more about how to future-proof the grid. We saw about mining and a copper mine and all these massive, like inconceivably massive electric mining trucks, loads of kind of micromobility sort of stuff. Amazing. But then equally, on the same token, we get to do these trips around the UK and visit these places that I don't know any people in those locations who wouldn't go there otherwise. And you see these like pockets of innovation. So a few weeks ago, we went up to York Minster to see the solar-powered cathedral. We met a small business making these incredible concrete radiators. We saw this Energy House 2.0, which is a lab where they develop new clean technologies for homes. And then like this social housing development of passive houses. And that was in sort of Lancaster, Sheffield, York and Manchester. And that has to be a really big highlight. Not least because we went bowling with the crew. That was great. That was nice. That was a nice evening.
This is fast descending into a game of one-upmanship of who had the nicest perks on a shoot. So let's turn this on its head. Imogen, what was your least favourite shoot of the year and why?
Oh, no. Oh, that is such a tough question and one I'd wish I'd prepared.
Or any calamitous moments from set this year that the audience might enjoy hearing about?
I can't think of anything.
I'm looking at the crew's faces.
I know that
they would have
at least
have a
three
huge
that you
list.
are not sure if you can share.
There are definitely things that we cannot share. But the one that was...
And he punched that guy, the guy with the boat. That was pretty bad.
No, we don't want to talk about that. He's
So violent.
Didn't do that. It's not true.
No, we had a really interesting shoot to a...
I'll remember that now. When Imogen's had a really interesting shoot, that means not good. No, but it does. I don't know what it was.
I'm trying to think of what's the term we use in our sort of debrief sessions. I think there's a lot to debrief on that shoot. Is generally what George will say when he means that was terrible. But no, we had a shoot the other day on a floating home made out of a shipping container, and it's like a really, really low energy home, and this guy Max owns it. It's all sorts of incredibly clever ways to make it very efficient and to make the space very efficient too. But so efficient, in fact, that there isn't really a door to the toilet.
I heard about this.
Yeah. And also, there's this other very clever thing where instead of having two different taps, one for the kitchen, one for the bathroom, he's got a source of water and then a bit of scaffolding pipe sliced in half. And so you can just tip the scaffolding pipe in either direction, wherever it needs to go.
Point it into the room which you need water in. Which is genius.
Total genius. So you obviously tip it that way.
So you've got a central feeder pipe in the wall to a centrally mounted tipper.
Yeah. And there's a little hole in the wall, and you can tip it to the kitchen sink, or you can tip it the other way, and it can and go to the bathroom. But that means that there's a big hole in the wall. Yes. So we turn up at this shoot. We've been given lots of lovely cups of tea, lots of coffee. Everyone's bladder's very full, and suddenly there is a little bit of a panic, not least from Katie, who's on our team, about how does one go to the loo with the big hole in the wall.
How big is the hole? I mean, I would imagine it was like a tiny little thing. Is it big?
Yeah, like a
big enough to glance at.
Big enough to accidentally lock eyes from across the room if you turn your head.
And
at the wrong moment.
It's a fairly small space altogether because it's in a container.
Yeah.
Not
So
a big
a hole about say the size of an A5 bit paper, kind of see-through door, very close quarters, and.
And also, there's an audible connection.
That's the other thing.
Because that would have been recently an extremely bad thing for me.
So there was a little bit of drama in the shoot in the morning. I mean, we'll just.
But you're all on the same boat, I suppose. But it's still not. Yeah.
I also really enjoy that. Not only have we spoken about bird poo already today. I enjoy the toilet humour that we bring to these very sophisticated discussions. Anyway, that did cause a bit of drama.
I don't know how peculiarly British toilet humour is. I know there is toilet humour in German because Henning Wehn has explained German toilet humour, I think, in his sets in the past. But I think it is quite a British thing that we think urinating and defecating is very, very, very funny / hugely embarrassing and humiliating.
I don't think I will ever not find it funny.
Right.
And
farting is hysterical.
Oh, I've got such a good fact. So, and I do want to hear about your worst shoot.
No, let's just talk about wee and poo. Let's stay right here.
So.
Oh, I've got a poo-related energy story. I'm holding that thought. We'll get back. We'll tune back in after the break. We're not having a break.
We've lost Imogen.
So, it's COP28.
Yep.
John Kerry, the US climate envoy, has just done a speech about banning coal.
I thought you were going to say it's just done a poo on stage. Sorry, he's done a speech about banning coal.
Yeah.
Serious topic.
I think this is true. But I did see it in the Daily Mirror, so, question marks. And he farted on stage.
I've heard it. Yes, you can hear it.
You can hear
Audibly.
it.
Yeah.
Which actually perhaps is a fantastic PR move because it's meant that more people have watched this video.
We need to move on from the endless burning of fossil fuel. It's not subtle.
It's not something.
No, you can hear it. Yeah.
And I think the best thing is that the lady next to him she just very casually does a...
I think you're right. It's PR genius.
PR genius.
Very, very unfair. Poor man.
But worship. What's your worship?
I mean, just quickly while I remember, there's a community's heating system for a big building in Sweden where they have pipes running in the sewer, in the city sewer, that extract the heat from the sewer and use a heat pump, and then that's distributed around the building. You've not got poo in your radiators. It's very important. So the two things are separated, but they're using the heat. And I as soon as I saw this, I went, this is why I'm not an engineer, because I have spent time in a sewer in London and in the winter. So, in fact, it was it'll be probably 10 years ago next week.
I think to clarify, you weren't just hanging out.
I didn't just
there.
randomly go in. No, I was filming in the sewers right under Bond Street Station in London, and it's an amazing thing to go in. It's really incredible. I did get ill, of course, because you always do, but it was fantastic. I loved it. And it's warm. So it was winter, cold. I was up on the top. And you got really weird protective clothing on and lots of straps and alarms and helmets and things. It's quite uncomfortable when you're outside. Massive boots. And you climb down this ladder, down and down and down and down and down into water. But it's warm.
What a visceral sound effect.
It's warm. And it's so mostly water. It's so mostly showers, baths, washing up,
I don't like mostly in that context
No,
at all.
but it is a thing. There's no denying it. I was standing in the water and we were chatting, setting up a shot, and there's my shin, and I felt dum, dum. And I don't know what that was, but something quite solid hit my shin. Not hard, not like, I just went, oh, that's not.
That is not good.
No. But the smell is not what you think. It's not sort of mainly poo. It's mainly kind of damp dish rags. It's not lovely, but it's not
a bit
horrible.
drainy.
But it can get really toxic, and then you've got mask and an alarm that you've got to get out, which we didn't have that. But it's warm, and I never made that connection. Of course, that's constantly warm. It never goes. It's between 13 and 18 degrees centigrade, 24 hours a day, all year.
Why?
In Sweden. So you can extract a huge amount of heat. Why? Because it showers.
Oh,
showers,
right.
baths,
Okay.
washing machines.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's not where I was picturing the warmth
No.
originating from.
Because I think the connection we make with sewers is it's just wee and poo.
Sure.
And that's about 4% wee and poo. It's mainly warm water.
I think that, and I reckon it's something we should come on to in a second as well, is what we're looking forward to in 2024. And this whole decarbonisation of heat and really effective and efficient transfer of heat, I think is so cool. And like these people who are like, this is a source of warmth. Let's extract that
it
warmth.
and heating a huge building. It's like 300 apartments are heated. The cheap headline is heated by poo. Actually, it's heated by shower water and washing machines. But
Maybe they've got the same PR people as John Kerry.
Yes.
But worst shoot.
Yes. Have you had a worse shoot, Jack?
I've got a couple of moments from shoots that are pretty chaotic, and I think I'll start with one that's toilet themed because that very much seems to be the direction that we're heading in with this podcast. This one goes out to cameraman Louis, who while we were up a mountain in Spain filming the Kia EV9, it dawned on me that I needed to go to the bathroom, and I was trying to think of a way to very politely say to the lovely Kia representatives that were
because you had
helping
people
us
there,
on
right.
shoot. That I need to pop to a bathroom, and I need a bathroom in particular, not a bush won't do. And Louis did it for me by delicately saying to the Kia PR chap, right, I better wrap this soon because Jack needs big toilet. Some of the most degrading. I never felt more like a small child. He knew what he was doing, and he was so pleased with himself for it. Louis, you're and I will have my revenge in 2024.
I just can picture
It's the most-
exactly
Yeah.
how he
So demeaning.
But very flat delivery. wouldn't be,
Oh yeah, deadpan completely. So that was good. And yeah, it's logistics, isn't it? We're good at picking interesting. What doesn't often happen, what almost never happens with us, is that we go and film something and we get there and we're like, oh, this actually is a bit. This thing that we've gone to
that's
film
what
is
I'm
not that
thinking,
interesting.
yeah.
We choose well. It's logistics. So one of the most, I won't say unpleasant, but challenging shoots that I had this year would be the Volvo EX30 shoot also in Spain, in Barcelona, which George, who's just over there, was the cameraman for, and he very kindly stepped in to fill in for cameraman Andy, who was unable to make it at the 11th hour. George had been to a gig in Bristol the night before the flight.
So he'd be very relaxed and feeling fit and extra flush.
Drove directly from the gig to the airport and proceeded to do a full day's shooting on 1 hour's sleep. And was just grabbing a few winks as we were driving from location to location. We'd have like a 5-minute drive from one place we were shooting to another, and I'd look in the rearview mirror, he's out cold. George is an extremely talented videographer, but everything was taking 2 takes because he was shaking for the first one. Then he sort of like steel himself and get it right for the second one. So, and also it rained. It was the one day of rain of the year in Barcelona. So stuff like that, logistical stuff sometimes gets a bit sticky.
Yeah.
But I can't say I've had any disasters. I certainly haven't filmed anything at all this year where I've kind of gotten there and midway through the shoot day gone, well, this is not an interesting or impressive product. So that's nice.
So George was there. We both went to Vancouver and did all of the shoots there. And we were driving one day in a Rivian, and I think we had the opposite to what you experienced. We were driving this Rivian from Vancouver up into this mine at Copper Mountain, and George had done the bulk of the driving, and he'd been driving for about 2 hours, and I was like, don't worry, George, I'll take over. It's my turn. I was driving for 9 minutes. I looked at the clock and I was like, God, I must have been driving for an hour and a half. And I was like, it's been 9 minutes. It's terrible. I pulled over after 11 minutes and had to swap back the driving to George because I was so tired. And I was so tired that I think I was hallucinating because we'd also had so many back-to-back shoots. And I looked up into the road and just said to George, dinosaurs. And we were both so deliriously tired.
But were you jet lagged as well? Was that a combination?
We were
of it?
jet
Right,
lagged.
okay.
We'd had these really, really long shoot days, and we also hadn't really eaten for a while. And then the shoot that we had the next day, we were so hungry because we hadn't had any proper food for a while. And Mitsubishi it was Mitsubishi and BCIT who we were doing the shoot with, and they bought some sushi. And I have never inhaled sushi so fast in my whole entire life. At points, I felt myself pushing these people from Mitsubishi BCIT out the way. George there and I there both were we're really tired, we're really jet lagged. We've been driving all through the night. We haven't eaten. But it's great, So as you say, it's often logistics.
We are under no pretenses that our jobs are anything other than some of the best jobs you can possibly have.
Yeah.
Every now and then, you are just a bit delirious with hunger and tiredness, and things get a bit weird. Robert, I'm hesitant to ask you about what your favourite or most memorable shoots of the year were, because that would require you remembering
to
some
remember
shoots that you did this year. But does anything?
I mean, I certainly I love my lawnmower in Australia.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that.
Anytime that it's you and any kind of heavy machinery.
It's particularly that it doesn't have a steering wheel; it has 2 levers.
Crazy.
Yeah, I did one of the rows. I don't know if it shows on the screen, but one of the rows, I was confident. I went, God, I've really got a hold of this. I looked back at it and it was it was absolutely. It was meant to be like that, and it was just a chronic zigzag.
That's a great episode.
But that was fun to do. I mean, Janus trucks just really impressed me, just for the scale, the fact that they can battery swap. So I'm really hoping that they survive and go on to greater things.
I've remembered one.
Yeah,
Emmerdale.
Emmerdale was weird and interesting. Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, so we were actually on the set of Emmerdale, filming in Emmerdale, because they built a whole village. And it's only weird when you go into one of the houses, looks totally just like a house. And you go in, it's like a big empty hall with lights stored in it, and it's not, anyway. But I think the one thing that I remember from working in that sort of telly for many years is scripts. So you have a script, and then it's loads of paper, and then they change one scene, and they give you another one. Oh, right, yeah, get rid of that. Mark up your other script. And then there's another one, then there's rewrites. So there's a pile and I've got them. I've kept some scripts at home just as a memento. It's like that. That's one series, and it's a pile of paper like that for one person in that show. And they've transferred it all to iPads, and the actors on Emmerdale will range from people who are completely natural with iPads to people older than me who go, this is an iPad, and who leave it on the ground and then drive over it, who drop it in the toilet, who smash it by accident, who spill coffee on it. So they get through quite a few iPads, I think, but they save it. Do you remember? It's millions of sheets of paper a year. Wow. Millions. It's not a few 100,000.
But it was one of those fascinating experiences where, and I also say this is another standout moment from the year, where obviously it's a film set. Emmerdale, for those outside of the UK, is a long-running soap opera.
Soap opera. I think you can call it soap opera, yeah.
But I don't think you can use the term soap opera anymore. It's like long-term drama.
They wouldn't call it that. ITV would not call it a soap opera. No, it's long-term drama. From a soap opera. Serial.
I don't know. We should...
Well, a soap opera came from America when soap companies sponsored radio shows, long-running radio shows. That's where it originally comes from. Occasionally, age helps with information.
Super interesting.
Yeah, so that's where the term came from. So it would have been, a soap company. So it would be Emmerdale, brought to you by Sunshine Soap. And that would be on radio 1932 or something like that.
Or could we have it in a Yorkshire accent?
Emmerdale, brought to you by Sunshine Soap, you dirty Slightly different approach.
But it's sort of...
I apologise to everyone in Yorkshire. That's how your granddad spoke. I met him.
Shame on you for drawing that out of Imogen. That's on you.
It was too tempting. But they have this kind of, they're Albert accredited. That's the kind of bit of BAFTA that sort of looks at carbon neutral TV production. But what was amazing was that we were obviously there with the cameras that we shoot stuff on. It's a massive TV production, and at one stage, their cameramen shouted over to our to our videographing team. Oh my goodness, words! I've got 4 brain cells. Shouted over to our videographers, "Call that a camera!"
Yeah, they had to,
which was quite funny.
Nice,
but I think even though it was kind of a weird shoot because it wasn't necessarily talking about electric vehicles or clean energy in the way that we normally do.
Although they do have chargers outside the village hall, which is part of the set, which work.
Yeah. Got a zappy. And there's loads of things that they talk about climate change and sustainable farming within episodes. But it's amazing to go around and sort of step inside somebody else's world for a day or for 2 days. Yeah. And I think that is always the beauty of what we do, is that we get to sort of explore other people's spheres for a little bit, even if it is just for...
And they had this is what was frustrating for us, we were a bit late, basically. They had a solar array and batteries built into the set. I mean, not on show, you wouldn't see it in shots, that powered the production. And that's kind of the whole basis of why we wanted to go and see it. And that wasn't, when we were there, that wasn't there, but they're going to do it again, and I've lost touch now. But that was... Because since then, one of the things I haven't told you guys about, I attended a BAFTA... which is the British Association of Film and Television Arts.
Good job.
Ooh.
So I think 3.2 brain cells. And a conference that they were holding in Cardiff in South Wales, where they were discussing sustainable TV production, all those things about, is an iPad better than 5,000 sheets of paper and all that stuff. And I was talking about that you could use electric vehicles. And I was on a panel where people were going, well, look, we have a container that can run a TV production on a remote location for 3 days. It's got solar panels on the roof, it's got a battery. It does have a diesel backup generator, which uses biofuel, so that. But they've managed to run that without using any diesel and run a big TV production with lights, with facilities, makeup and everything, because they built it to work in with the way that TV production works. So like first thing in the morning, really early, there's cooking, there's makeup, there's heating. because you've got actors in makeup, in costume, and it needs to be warm and light, and there's got to be food, so that uses a lot of energy. And then they go into actual filming, they're using almost none. And that's when you charge up your batteries from the solar, and they've said this is when it works. And then in the evening, there's more demand for there's food and there's lunch and there's blah, blah, blah. But they've worked out the kind of energy use over the day, and they can do off-grid. I mean, it's going to be within 2 years, off-grid diesel-less TV production, 100%. You won't even consider doing diesel just for economic reasons. Just makes more sense.
Super cool.
And so that kit is being developed by those facilities companies. And studios the same. So what are studios? Big building. What's on the roof? Nothing.
Plenty of space for solar.
Yes. Yeah. So there's Doctor Who. So a lot of people have heard of Doctor Who.
Who?
Is shot in a studio that does have...
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
But there's a lot... Yeah, they shoot that in very modern studios with lots of solar stuff. I don't know.
Best car you've driven this year?
I'm just looking at my list of most important cars that I drove this year. I'll tell
It's
you
a
my
long
short
list.
Oh, yeah,
I'll tell you my
please
short
do.
list.
Take
I've
your
scribbled
short
down. So Fisker Ocean, I touched on Fisker
Yeah.
earlier. It's not just that the car is brilliant and a lot cheaper than the cars it goes directly up against. It's the how deep sustainability is embedded into the way that company goes about everything. So the car is built using less components and it's assembled in such a way that it can be easily disassembled and recycled at the end of its life cycle. That's just one example off the top of my head, but they are obsessed with sustainability, and it's really, really exciting to see a car brand doing things that way. I've got the Xpeng P7 down here, which is the first Chinese car that I've driven where I've gone, it's good, but it's just so good.
Right.
It's just so good. Yeah. It's so unbelievably impressive. The BYD Dolphin I put in that same category. BYD Seal, you probably put in that same category. Yeah. I think the most exciting car I filmed with this year is one that I didn't drive, and it's the new Citroen EC3, which is coming out next year. And this maybe leads us into a nice conversation about what we're excited about next year, because that is the first truly, really, really, really cheap and cheerful electric family car from a legacy car brand. It's going to be 23,300 euros in Europe. They've fixed the lease price at 99 euros a month. So this is it. We finally have them. Yeah. These are electric cars that cost as much, if not less, once you factor in cost of ownership, as the cheapest new petrol cars. Yeah. It's happened. They're here.
And it's also really intriguing that it's not a Chinese car.
Yeah.
It's a European-built, European company.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary.
That's right. So we've got that coming next year. This is a little teaser to my new cars guide. We've got the Dacia Spring is coming to the UK. That's already in Europe, but that's less than £20,000 when it comes to the UK. And I'm really hoping that BYD might send some of their seagulls over here, because we've got the BYD Dolphin, which is lovely and cheap. But the BYD Seagull, which is like a super mini, it's sort of like a Ford KA size thing, costs like £8,500 in China.
Wow.
And in the 7 months that it's been in production, they've made 200,000 of them.
Wow.
And sold them all in the Chinese market. Wow. So do us a favour.
Yes.
BYD, just pop the steering wheel over on the other side and send a few this way. You've got loads.
Yes.
Do you know, I saw on Elliot's LinkedIn earlier on today about the impact that the fact that if we consider how far ahead Tesla and the Chinese brands are, and the impact that that's going to have on the second-hand EV market.
Yeah.
And especially when you consider depreciation values, and therefore not only are these already cheaper, but they're going to be even cheaper, and how that is going to fundamentally change the game in Europe. And imagine a second-hand Seagull.
I can't wait 10 years from now, whenever, to be doing videos about, the 3 best used EVs you can get for less than $5,000.
Yeah.
We're not close, but we'll get there eventually.
Yeah, 100%.
Things that we're really looking forward to in the coming 12 months, be it a shoot or a nice holiday you've got coming up, I don't know.
So I have also just filmed Top Tech 2024, which is... It's always quite tricky because there's so many things that you're like, how can I narrow this down into a nice 11-minute episode? A couple of things. I'm really excited to see how certain technologies are getting much smaller. So, for example, we're seeing a whole bunch of really teeny tiny heat pumps that are going to be much cheaper. Seeing lots of other kind of like clever, smaller heating technologies as well. I'm not excited, but I'm intrigued to see how all the various general elections, presidential elections, et cetera, go next year.
Yeah.
I think we've had a flavour of how politicised the climate agenda feels, and I think that's going to dial up a gear next year. And I think in response, we can continue to show where things just make so much more sense to be cleaner, to be greener, et cetera, and kind of keep peddling that positivity, hopefully. And then there's just like a few things that we're going to start revisiting. And that's really cool to see the evolution of different companies. So, for example, 2 years ago, we went and saw Lunas, who, that was one of your episodes.
Yeah.
And they have done lots of kind of electric retrofits of really, really luxury vehicles. You know, David Beckham has one, for example. But their big thing that they are way more excited about are their bin lorries.
Yeah.
And they have a massive partnership with Biffa. They're showing that actually you can scale electric retrofits and that it is really possible, especially for sort of local authority owned vehicles and fleets and that kind of thing. So there's a few examples like Luna's where we're going back and seeing how much further they've got in just like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, that's cool.
So those sorts of things I'm really, really excited about.
There is a side of me that I'd like to do it with all of us. I don't want to do it on my own, where I'd love to go on because I've never done it. But imagine if we could do, not all day necessarily, just a short shift, going around with an electric bin lorry on a shift.
Oh.
And look, because now with the wheelie bins, you wheel them out, you hook them on. I've always wanted to press the button that goes.
So this is where I am so sorry to tell you that is what they've offered us. But you're in Australia. But you are in Australia.
Sounds like a bit of us, Imogen.
Yeah.
Are you going to get to go and do bins?
I think we are.
I would like to say that until the age of at least 9 or 10, my answer to the question, what is your dream job, was bin man. Because they get to stand on the back of them.
Yes, they could do
yeah,
then. I don't know if
yeah.
they do now. I'm not sure that they're allowed to. It's a shame. But isn't that funny that was my headmaster? You know, if you don't make more effort, boy, you're going to end up as a bin man. And I was thinking, I'd love to be a bin man. That sounds fantastic. You're out all day, you're fit, you're doing something. Yeah.
Robert, is anything on your radar for 2024, be it a car or
I'm now quite excited about the show in Sydney. I mean, I'm always excited, but what the most recent news, I don't want to go into details now, but it's going to be enormous. It has the potential to be one of the biggest shows we've ever done. It's insane from the point of view of the people exhibiting there. Yeah. But the car companies from all around the world that have realised that there's this, in a sense, I'm going to just use the word, and I don't like using it, virgin market for electric vehicles in Australia that's expanding so quickly. It's worth making an effort to display what you've got on sale. And so it's just extraordinary. It's very, very, because it's always that way. I mean, it's kind of boring inside baseball information, but when we first do a show, like the very first show we did in the UK, it was hell to get any manufacturers. In fact, I think we got one for the first year. No one wants to know, but they all come and look, and then the second year they're all there. Well, that's happened in Australia times 10. So it's really exciting. So we're in a much bigger venue with amazing test drive facilities. We had to take over an extra hall that we hadn't originally booked. So that's really exciting, though, when those shows are there. And because I'm there already, I do feel smug about that. But I'm going to be, on the day that I know you're shooting the bins, I want you to know I'll be walking along a beautiful beach, really upset.
I do think, and I know that we've spoken about this before, that is the thing about the live shows, is that they are very reflective of the state of the industry. And even though we do these shows, you know, this is the second Australia show, for example, they just feel different because you get that
totally
kind
different.
of like real sense of where the general sort of ecosystem is, and the conversations change each time as a consequence.
But I'm definitely next year. I'm as you say, with the various elections going on. I don't think there's going to be one rule that binds them all or anything like that. But that's going to be a massive challenge. But what I do feel now, which I was, say, 5 years ago, much less confident of, is just the weight of change, the kind of mass of movement in the direction of using cleaner, more sustainable, circular economy, recycling materials. It's just too big. The economics behind it are too big for any single politician, no matter their status, to go, we're not going to do that anymore. I think the world will go, yeah, fine, mate, don't do it. We're doing it over here, and we're doing it down here, and we're doing it up there and over here. It's a kind of what politicians say now, which I've always wanted to be the case, is utterly irrelevant in regards to this, including supporting it, because it shouldn't need support. It should be a standalone business decision. Why are you making electric cars? Because they're better and they're cheaper and they last longer and we make money out of them. Yeah, that's why.
That's such a vital point. I think there's been so much anti-EV and anti-green tech discourse this year from some fairly biased politicians, but it's just unstoppable at this point, because we're not just doing this because this tech is kinder to the planet. It's also just better.
It's better.
It's better, and ultimately it's cheaper for people.
Yeah,
it can't be stopped.
No. Yeah. So I think that's an exciting prospect. One thing I wanted to quickly reflect on was the live shows from last year. Just to how they all went, because I think we had these real bright surprises of Harrogate and Vancouver in particular, were these first shows we've done there. Oh, it's only a little show in Harrogate. It's just local. It was a madness. Weren't we blessed though? Beautiful weather, stunning location, amazing. It was just amazing. I sat on my own in one of the fields and surrounded by kids running around and people talking about electric. I just couldn't. I can't believe this is. It was like being at a fair, like at a country fair. It was beautiful.
It was amazing, and I remember one of my talks. I think it was home energy hacks. And it was like, people were whooping and cheering. And I was like, the reaction here and the sort of the atmosphere in the crowd doesn't feel like it matches the topic of conversation that we're having. And
if it was Taylor Swift you were interviewing.
Yeah. But it just sort of is exactly that. It had such a wonderful, friendly atmosphere.
Yeah. And then Vancouver was an extraordinary show. I mean, that was huge. We just had no idea. I mean, I don't know what I think I no longer expect anything. I don't know what to expect, because I've always been wrong, whatever I've expected. But that was amazing, and I can't wait to go back there.
We liked all the shows, it's important to say. They were all good this year. But
Farnborough was massive.
It was, but the new ones carry the most sort of anxiety. They're the ones that we're the most anxious about going into them, because you go to a new place and you have no idea if people are going to show up, and then they all exceeded expectations this year.
Well, it's a bit like organising your own birthday party, and you're like,
maybe they won't come, maybe they'll hate me,
maybe who'll hate cars.
But that first morning in Sydney, I wish I'd seen it. I only heard stories about it, but I don't know who it was now. Someone like Claire, or it wasn't Sophie, one of the team that runs the shows, was behind a little desk with a little phone and a card reader in case people wanted to buy a ticket on the door. Perfectly. And we do. We get maybe 20 or 30 people do that. Everyone else is booked. Not in Sydney. There was like 1,000 people waiting to buy tickets. And she's going, oh my God. So, that was a bit exceptional. It was hugely oversubscribed to what we expected. Hence why we've moved.
And obviously this year, rebranding, Everything Electric
show.
London, big, XL,
big, huge,
scary.
Scary.
But what I'm so excited about that is you're in the hall and there's all the exhibitions, and through there is all the car companies with their big stands, and there's the test drives, and you get in the car inside the hall and you drive out of a ramp onto the road. Ooh. So you don't have to go out to some car park in the rain or in the cold or whatever. You get in the car in the building because it's an electric car. Thank you very much. It's where Formula E race through the building.
I thought you were going to say you're excited about the Elizabeth line.
I am so excited about the Elizabeth line. I can't breathe with the excitement of the Elizabeth line. It's so quick.
Yeah, I'm excited about being able to cycle to bed after the show. My bed.
Ooh.
Your own
my
bed.
very own bed.
Cycle to your own bed.
I'm going to get FOMO. All the crew are going to be staying in a hotel near the show. I'm going to
party.
Be like a sad. I'll be like, can I hang out with you guys before I go home?
You could send them a picture. I'm having soup at home.
Yeah.
You have to have soup, Jack. It's important.
It's going to be a bonkers year, I think.
Yeah, I think it is. I think I've got a feeling we'll be quite busy. I think that's certainly the case. But look, it's been really lovely. reflecting on and catching up with you guys are just so amazing. Let me just say that. I don't need to go any further, but it's incredible, amazing privilege for me to have people like you and the crew. They're quite annoying.
Almost. So nearly we gave them a moment. We mustn't give them a moment.
You can't give them a moment, or they say you want to do a big poo, and that's not fair.
That's what happens.
But anyway, no, it's been great. That's it. I mean, I can't even bother. Don't subscribe over Christmas. Just have some cheese, as Jack suggested.
Subscribe. Do subscribe.
All right, do subscribe. But I don't want to say that. All right,
absolutely subscribe to both of the YouTube channels. Follow us on Instagram.
Leave
all
us a
of
nice
it.
review.
Yes, do that. Do that.
Do subscribe. Do tell your friends about this fabulous podcast where you can hear about the latest in technology and bowel movements. Yeah. I mean, what more is there to life?
The politicization of climate change, but also feces.
Yes. Sewage is the heat of the future. And on that note, if you have been, thank you for watching.